So, the most recent episode of My Hero Academia Vigilantes is out, and there's a lot that I need to talk about in this episode. From the many additions made to this episode, even down to the major reveals that are going to be coming out. All of that and more is what we're going to be talking about in this video. So hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and let's get into this breakdown and review of My Hero Academia Vigilantes Season 1, Episode 10. And before we get into the breakdown proper, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload content like this, and hit that like button so that this video can blow up and be noticed by the YouTube algorithm. Because if you like seeing content like this, you need to do all three. And without the way, let's dive right into the breakdown and review. And to start off, the episode's title, Event Announcement, takes its name not from a manga chapter, but from the main plot of the next few episodes, which is the announcement and performance on the rooftop of the Naruhata department store where something big is going to happen. And when it comes to what this episode covers, it covers material from chapters 19 and 20 and the first 3 pages of chapter 21. And because it is a new title card for the episode, we do get a different title screen defining what an idol is, because the next episodes will be a performance based off Pop Step, who is an idol. And when it comes to this episode, it actually starts off with a mini recap of a general description and understanding of what has happened so far in the narrative, including Koichi becoming a vigilante alongside Knuckle Duster and Pop Step, and the escapades that they've gone on. And this sequence uses reused scenes from the previous episodes. However, the recap seems to be used as more of a framing device to transition into Knuckle Duster talking with his wife in the hospital from episode 6, where we got the proper introduction of Soga's friends wrapped in Mayuru. This is most likely used to transition into Knuckle Duster talking with his wife in the hospital about his new life and how he's made new friends, which would include Pop Step, Koichi, and eventually Soga. But something that I need to break down with this entire sequence is that it is a massive change from what we got in the manga, because this is a sequence that we should have gotten later on in the episode, because in chapter 19 it happens later in that chapter, which is rearranged with this scene with the upcoming scene involving Soga, where basically the Soga scene should have happened first, and then what we got in this scene with Knuckle Duster happens afterward. But along with that change and rearrangement, we also get a small added scene of a flower as we are zooming and panning into Knuckle Duster talking with his wife, as we get beautiful flowing motions of the curtains where we can actually see a little bit of Knuckle Duster's wife's face, which we're able to see clearer in the anime versus what we got in the manga in this same scene. However, the small added detail is actually a flower on the nightstand next to the hospital bed, which is most likely an Asiatic lily by the name of King Pete, which, when it comes to lilies, and this one potentially in particular, can symbolize both purity or positivity, and it's most likely used in this scene and is brought to the bedside of his wife to try and make it a little bit more positive when it comes to her condition, which unfortunately we do get a little bit information about what's going on with Knuckle Duster's wife, as we get him communicating with the doctor with some nice additional dialogue added to the doctor, talking about how Knuckle Duster's wife's condition is not doing well, which is in the anime. But what is cool is how the anime makes the scene less sad and melancholic, which is how it felt like in the manga, to be a little bit more eerie and unsettling in the anime, as we have the doctor's voice either being completely absent or being very quiet and distorted.
現在のところ厳しい状態が続いております。現状厳しいお話になりますね。
And how this leads the atmosphere to be a little bit more eerie, especially when the anime adds an original flashback showing what happened to Knuckle Duster's wife, which involved Queen in their current body, which could potentially reveal that Queen and Knuckle Duster have a more personal relationship than just being antagonistic and spreading drugs around the city. Basically, He's going after Queen because it's personal. So I do really want to point out how there are a lot more smaller changes and rearrangements like this in the episode that actually helps with the flow of the episode and allows it to fit more in an anime medium versus what we got in the manga. And this could be even seen more after the intro, where the episode starts off more proper like it was in the manga, with Soga looking for a particular girl that looks very similar to Queen when she was younger, and how when it comes to this scene, there is a slight change in the scene order to which we get one of the girls who we've seen throughout the season being actually friends with Queen. We see that in the manga, she disappears and then Soga is escorted out of the school's vicinity. But in the anime, it's hinted that she leaves as we see the other friend who may want to confront or contact Queen as Soga is escorted out of the facility or out of like the school grounds, and then we see that her friend disappeared. So it really just adds a little bit more tension to the scene in the anime versus what we got in the manga. But even after that, we do get the scene play out afterwards, very much like in the manga, with Soga confronting this random girl, her flashing her undergarments to reveal a whole bunch of bees that Soga is able to fend off, with his friends arriving in the nick of time to pick him up and get him out of this situation. And what's very interesting about this scene is that we do get a little bit of another small change, because a slight change that we get in the sequence is Rapt and Moyayura coming in and arriving on 2 bikes instead of 1 like they were in the manga, as well as how the anime adds Rapt throwing Soga a helmet, showing that they were more prepared in the anime versus what we got in the manga. And just another slight change is that we do get a little bit more of them driving and riding their bikes in the city in a more defined background in the anime versus what we got in the manga. And we're going to be seeing, like I said, even more changes like this later on. And then we get back to the hospital as we continued from the beginning of Knuckle Duster talking with his wife like in the manga, but the anime gives his wife actual dialogue about their daughter instead of just muttering, and how Knuckle Duster still meets up with Soga, who tells him about the girl that they met up and saw, as Soga tries to get more information out of Knuckle Duster but fails. So I really like this slight change, and for those who have been following along, this confirms that Knuckle Duster does have a daughter, which puts into context what he was saying about parents letting their kids fly and teaching them how to land, put more into context as he's speaking from experience as a parent. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to see who his daughter is very soon. I wonder who it could be. But after that, we do get the conversation between Soga, Rapt, and Moyarura, where we get a change from the manga, as in the manga, they are pushing Moyaruru's bike down the random street as they eventually meet up with Koichi by coincidence, but in the anime, they are actually more relaxing and having a smoke in the park, and this is where they eventually meet up with Koichi and Popstep as well. But there are many reasons why this change may have occurred, but from my understanding and interpretation of it, they changed it to make the situation feel less coincidental and more casual, as they are making the situation a lot more casual. And having said in the park makes sense for why they would meet up with Pop and Koichi, because this is most likely an area that they've been to multiple times and that they most likely patrol more frequently. And what I like about this scene as well in both the anime and the manga is really showing who Koichi is as a character and how he's beginning to change the mind and perspective of Soga when it comes to how he believes that people view him as a monster, but he's realizing that actually Koichi does view him as a person even after all the horrible things he's done to him, showing a gradual change in his character that is going to lead to big results towards the end of the series. But what's interesting about this sequence being a little bit more lax is how it's in stark contrast to the reveal of what Queen is doing. As we learn how Queen is able to survive, even though it's most likely and very apparent from this episode that Queen and this girl are 2 different beings and that they are being controlled by something. And because they're being controlled by something and seems to have no real attachment from what we can tell, we learn how they're able to make money, which is basically luring people either to their homes or to a house that they're occupying and pretty much leaving them in a death-like state, if not straight up killing them and using the money off their card. And this scene in the anime is even more terrifying and disturbing than what we get in the manga, which is then added upon by the anime adding a news bulletin showing and describing what happened to the girl that had the bees come out of her that attacked Soga, and implying that she's in critical condition. Once again, just really adding a little bit more character to Queen and how she really doesn't care about anyone but herself and the mission. And how this transitions into a very fun section of the episode, and how this section and half of the episode ends with Knuckle Duster training like he was doing in the manga, but we see a little bit more of the actions that he takes in his training, as we see Knuckle Duster training more thoroughly in the punching bags than in the manga, as well as just seeing how he's able to do the curl-ups, and just a lot more of the general exercises that he's doing as it's extended upon in the anime just slightly, as we see him smile at a full image of Queen, implying that he has a strong connection with her. And now we're approaching more or less the back end of the episode, where the adaptations slow down a little bit more, as well as changes, but aren't completely gone. For instance, from this part of the episode, we follow the adventures and exploration of Pop Step having her first major performance, as Pop gets invited to perform at their local department store, and she is very unsure if she should be able to perform and is very nervous as Koichi tries to help her, as Knuckle Duster also reassures her and that she should go out and do it, which is a very much inspirational way of doing it, and really just shows that Knuckle Duster does know how to deal with kids because he is a parent himself. And Koichi does try to help Pop in this step by inviting Makoto over to help, when we get a very fun sequence of Pop Step punching Koichi. But that in the anime, we see that she punches him out of the apartment 3 different times, while in the manga, it's just one punch or push. But what remains the same is that she's mad at Koichi for revealing their secrets to Makoto, to which he confirms that she just figured it out on her own. And how we do get Makoto reassuring them that she will keep their secret and be professional, as Popstep reluctantly agrees to Makoto's help, as she immediately jumps into action and talks with the people at the venue, and also showing off her connection as being a part of Captain Celebrity's organization. And now we're getting a little bit more action in this episode, as we see CC fighting an instant villain with his adoring new fans, including Ichimoku and Jubei, cheering him on. And what's great about this sequence is that this is another expanded upon sequence from the manga, as well as some changes made to this scene as well. Because in the manga, Captain Celebrity actually faces a villain called Eiji Okamura, who is an instant villain that is clearly inspired by Gamera. But in the anime, this character is placed by another villain who resembles a giant flying crab. But even with that slight change, we do get to see a little bit more action out of him, as well as getting to see more of the reactions of the people looking up at Captain Celebrity, as well as getting a little bit more music and cheering from his Yankee following fans. So with those changes, we do get some stuff that still remains the same, because Captain Celebrity still gets a call from Makoto about working together with the department store to increase his goodwill with the area that he's serving, which allows for them to go from a normal karaoke gig to it being a real type of indie concert. And it's from this moment on where we actually get to see the first 3 pages of chapter 21 adapted, which is something interesting because it really just shows once again that they're willing to rearrange things to make them fit more for the anime, even if it means taking stuff that is supposed to occur the next day taking place in present time. Because the 3 pages that we get is just showing how the event is being set up by Makoto, telling Pop that she has to sing the store's theme song, which we get expanded upon from the manga in the anime, from just the song being played off Makoto's phone to a full-fledged animated video that is being shown to them as well as the watchers ourselves. And what I like about it is that they didn't really have to put in the effort to do this. They could have just put the phone up and just had the music play, but they animated a more or less commercial for the department store, where there are many animals and characters such as bunnies, gorillas, pandas, and even a tanuki, which is most likely a reference to the higher up who is in charge of their specific sect of the department stores, who also resembles a tanuki as well. And once again, this just really shows how much Vigilantes focuses on more of the heteromorphic quirk users and how they're able to interact a little bit more with society. So I really like this addition, and what we get from the manga as well is a slight change, because we learn that Popstep learns about joining the ensemble immediately after Makoto finishes her proposal for the event in the anime. However, the manga shows her learning about this the following day. Once again, this ties into the fact that they added these 3 pages into a section of the story that was chapter 20 to allow it to flow a little bit better in the anime, and for them to really just add to the grief and like the complexity that Pop is feeling at this moment. And this is seen even more as we cut back to material from chapter 20 in the episode of Pop being nervous about her singing for her fans as Koichi, Ichimoku, and Jubei give their support. And this is when we see Koichi talk with Jubei and Ichimoku as Pop is anxious specifically about her performing with the ensemble, and this is very special and specific to the anime because in the manga, she is just anxious about performing in general. And I want to just confirm once again how they're able to change stuff from the manga to the anime and not forget, for the most part, how it's supposed to fit into the situation of the anime better, instead of just going straight from what it was from the manga, which would have made less sense. So once again, there are a lot of changes in this episode, and it really just improves upon what we got in the manga. But unfortunately, the episode pretty much comes to an end as we see Queen making plans to try and ruin the Marukane department store event, as she is confronted by one of her friends asking about what happened to the friend that we saw that was hospitalized, as we see Knuckle Duster in the background finally finding out where she is, which is going to be leading into both the penultimate and ultimate episode of this season. So yeah, it seems as if the more that we get into the series, the more changes that they make to the anime for the better, and how they're not afraid to add a little bit more flourishes that really adds to the dynamics that characters have with each other, as well as willing to change and flip things in a way that would make sense and allow for it to flow better in an anime format. So I really did enjoy this episode, really enjoyed all of the changes, and let me ask you this. How did you feel about the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And what was your favorite change from the episode? And tell me if I missed any changes down below. So, like the video, leave a comment, and do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!